Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson. Today we're listening to End of Watch. This is from Murder Comes to Town.
With all available units, backup needed at 200 South Broadway. 34, I'll be on my way. Sheriff? What?
In the wee hours of the night, whispered sounds of nature are all anyone expects to hear in Cleveland, Oklahoma. But October 13th, 2001 is by no means a usual night.
Got a phone call. It's from the sheriff's office dispatcher. He said, hey, you need to get out to the Wolfie place just outside of town.
Sheriff? 32 to dispatch. I need ambulance here right now.
I get out there and Dwight's hanging, kind of half in and half out of his car. He's laying on his belly. And I gotta tell you, I freak out just a little bit. It's a man I know and I like and I love.
Under Sheriff Don Swager is experiencing a waking nightmare. Sheriff Dwight Woodrow Jr., his boss and best friend, is barely clinging to life.
You can see this big gray blob right in the middle of his chest. And, I'm thinking to myself, that's a bullet. And I can't believe that a bullet's there. I know he's been shot multiple times.
The sheriff is quickly rushed to an area hospital, leaving his deputies reeling in the dark.
They were trying to get whatever they could out of him so we could get these people caught. But it was plainly apparent that he just could not talk.
Across town, the county chaplain arrives at the sheriff's home, bearing the terrible news.
I knew that, we need to get a hold of Karen because she's like most wives. She's been home listening to the radio and she's heard at 10:23. She knows there's some kind of trouble going on.
I just remember looking at the clock and it was like 4:40 in the morning and I was like, why is somebody knocking at my door?
Hey, Karen.
He said, Dwight's been shot.
You mind if I come in?
And I was just like, well, how bad? How bad is it? He said, I don't know. He said, but we need to go to the hospital.
By 5 a.m., roughly an hour and a half after the sheriff is shot, Oklahoma State investigators arrive to take over the case.
We decided early on that since the Pawnee County deputies were actually closer to Dwight, it was determined that they would just basically stay out of the investigation unless they were needed.
It's best investigation to keep an open mind, not be emotionally involved so you don't get tunnel vision and miss things.
But even for the OSBI agents, this investigation is personal.
I had worked some cases previously in Pawnee County, so having met Dwight before, I was able to know him. He was always very friendly, very professional, and he was really someone that people enjoyed being around.
When it's a fellow officer that something has happened to, you always think, well, it could have been me that was down there.
Agents begin by scouring the ground near the sheriff's vehicle for physical evidence. Yet it's what they don't find that speaks volumes.
There were no shell casings found at the crime scene, and most people don't think to pick up their shell casings when they're shooting someone in the heat of that happening.
And shell casings aren't the only thing missing.
There was no gun found in the car, in the trunk, anywhere in the vehicle. The night that Dwight was shot, Dwight and several deputies were out serving a search warrant. He showed up at the briefing. He didn't have his gun on. When they left the briefing, he put his gun on. They served the search warrant. As soon as they were raising handcuffs, he took his gun back off. Dwight knew, point blank, knew he was safe in that community.
But a safe man doesn't get shot. Unless somebody wants Cleveland's top lawman dead.
Did the sheriff give any description of a suspect?
Dwight had radioed in that he was out with an individual by the name of Robert Weller.
Who is this person? Where did this name come from? Is there a Robert Weller? And does this person have any warrants? Does this person have any reason to be there? Who is Robert Weller?
As the OSBI waits for the answer to that question, they commandeer a small office. One by one, they bring in interviewees, including one of the last men to see him alive.
I want to go over what you saw when you got here. Were there any other vehicles present? You know, I did pass a vehicle coming over here.
Cleveland being the size it was, they roll up the sidewalks at night. So if you have vehicles on the roadway, they kind of stick out to you.
And this one has a rather memorable characteristic.
Red pickup truck. No hood on it.
No hood.
No.
Did you see anyone inside the truck?
No, it was too dark. I tried to ask the sheriff, but I don't even think he heard what I was saying.
OSBI, asked, do you know of any contentious cases? Do you know of any people that he had problems with due to, prior arrest or his election as the sheriff? We could name some cases where he was involved and, there was physical violence or threat.
With no more to add, Under Sheriff Swager leaves for an important and personal post.
They told me I needed to stay at the hospital and man the door so nobody came in.
The next man summoned to speak with OSBI agents is oilfield property owner Jeffrey Spess.
So you know the sheriff personally?
Oh yeah, everybody does Dwight.
I grew up around Cleveland, and Dwight grew up in this area. I was sharing with him about a trailer that had been stolen in our yard, and he wanted to help, so he placed the area under greater surveillance.
Regrettably, Jeffrey Spess is no stranger to criminal activity in and around his oil facility.
Equipment being stolen is one of the major challenges for us in the oil business. A lot of the equipment is very expensive.
Sometimes they have different gases like anhydrous gas, which methamphetamine users or manufacturers might try to steal.
Do you notice anything missing?
Nothing.
Tell me about the call you got tonight.
I got a phone call from the Pawnee County dispatcher telling me that Dwight had come upon an individual in our yard who claimed to be one of our employees and gave his name as Robert Weller.
And Mr. Weller is an employee of yours?
Not too sure. We have so many seasonal people and I don't always know their names.
I didn't recognize that name. Obviously, I wasn't thinking too well that morning.
Meanwhile, at the hospital, those who have gathered agonize as the sheriff bravely fights to survive.
I'm trying to talk to him and tell him everything's going to be all right and everything's going to be okay. And just in that split second there, he looks up at me, and I can tell he's fully aware. And he gives me this big, grin. He always had. And he faces up a little bit, and then he's gone. He's just gone.
I remember them telling us that he didn't make it, and that's really all I remember about it. It was It was awful.
At just 36 years old, Sheriff Dwight Woodrow's watch comes to an end.
Dwight grew up in Cleveland and lived in the same community, probably within a 10-mile radius his whole life.
In 1989, Dwight marries local girl Karen Louise Bell, and from the very beginning, their family life is the center of his world.
He was very excited to be a father. He loved kids. He had a niece and a nephew at the time, and he just loved playing with them and teasing them. And he was very excited when we found out we were having our first child, and the second, and the third, and the fourth.
Outside of family, Dwight's biggest interest is law enforcement.
When he went to college, he was a criminal justice major, and that's all he ever wanted.
After 13 successful years on the Pawnee County Police Force, Dwight runs for sheriff and handily wins.
When he became sheriff, he became the man he was meant to be. That was his dream. He achieved it, and he blossomed.
I had said one time that I was glad he was going to be the sheriff because then he would be behind a desk and he might be a little safer because I had always worried that something would happen to him. And I was very wrong because he was never a sit behind a desk kind of sheriff. He wanted to be out there. He wanted people to know him. He wanted people to see his presence so they felt safe and protected.
Now, his murder has the town of 3,000 hungry for justice. Though learning the truth is something little old Cleveland may not be ready for. Though just a half an hour from Tulsa, city life is a world away for those who live in the 2-mile town of Cleveland, Oklahoma.
Cleveland is almost completely surrounded by the Arkansas River.
We have just several little stores and things in town, not a whole lot of big business. So it's just a really happy little small town.
A lot of people who live here are employed in the service end of the oil industry, service and production.
While oil manufacture has been a boon for the area, the theft of refinery equipment is a growing issue for law enforcement.
Most of the things that are being stolen are finding their way back into the oil business and through unscrupulous members of the oil business that are willing to buy stolen equipment.
That concern is what drew local Sheriff Dwight Woodrow to Spess Oil in the early hours of October 13th, 2001.
Dwight was really big on working property crimes. Kind of his philosophy is property crimes affect quality of life. It is more important than stopping cars, and it is more important than dope because we need to take care of the person that was violated.
The question now is, could this philosophy have cost the popular sheriff his life? The answer is something everyone who came in contact with him is vested in getting.
Of course, we're Christians. We have faith. We know that God does take care of things, but we really wanted the satisfaction of seeing something at this time, and I just wasn't sure that it would ever happen.
Most of us had been with him just minutes before he was shot, and so it was a very personal thing for us to find out who did it and that justice was served.
By daylight, investigators are fully tuned into the rumor mill, and they're hoping their trained ears can pick up on any whispers of truth.
In a community that size, so small, and everybody knows each other, there's always people that have grudges. So we really did seriously have to look at, was it someone that had, a reason, real or imagined, to want Dwight dead?
While filtering through incoming tips, OSBI agents also researched their first lead, the name called in just before the sheriff was shot, Robert Weller.
We ran all kinds of checks, went through records to try to find anybody with the name Robert Weller.
I don't have a Weller, I have a Waller.
An address?
When we came across the Robert Waller, we were able to determine that he lived in the Sand Springs area, which is over there in West Tulsa area.
There's always a certain amount of pressure in these types of investigations because someone's died. And in this case, not only has someone died, it's a police officer and it's someone that you know.
Mr. Waller?
You feel some internal pressure because you know how important it is to that family that they find out what happened to their loved one, and you want to make sure that this person isn't out to kill someone else.
Holy. Come take a look.
We gotta find this guy.
Perhaps this Robert Waller has a red pickup truck. Maybe he also had an unknown grudge against the sheriff or a motive to steal his gun. To find out, state agents track him down at his workplace, a gun shop in Tulsa.
Are you Robert Waller?
Wally,
You're Robert Waller.
Yes.
Have you ever been to a Spess Oil in Cleveland?
Special Oil? No. I haven't been down to Cleveland in 10 years.
Can anyone confirm this?
My wife can.
He was very cooperative. He was able to tell us where he was.
We checked his alibi, and it was determined that he didn't have anything to do with this case.
Returning from Tulsa empty-handed, Smith and Franchini hope their other leads prove to be more fruitful. Of particular interest is the vehicle spotted leaving Spess Oil.
Have you got any leads on that truck?
It was a red truck without a hood, so it should have been easily noticed.
Maybe so, but the hoodless red truck seems to have vanished.
The parking lot of Spess is a kind of combination of dirt and small gravel, so tire prints and footprints were disappearing quickly.
As evidence slips away, a gripping sense of urgency takes hold of state investigators.
Law enforcement really buys into this whole, if it's not solved in the first 48 hours, the chances of it getting solved are diminished by the day.
And the days do go by.
To be honest, I thought by sundown the first day, they would have someone in custody. And then it became day 2, and then 3. Then I began to wonder if they were ever going to find out what had happened.
4 days after Sheriff Dwight Woodrell's death, what seems like the entire county turns out to honor his life and service with a memorial.
Dwight had told me several times if anything ever happened to him, what he wanted done. And I think he just talked about that because of his line of work. Not that anything like that ever happened around here, but that it was always a possibility.
It was the biggest funeral I've ever been to. Standing room only, best I can remember. The governor flew in and spoke. I think Dwight would have been really proud.
To this day, I can't hear taps without just being emotionally overwhelmed. I had to take people to that day every time.
A day after Sheriff Woodrell was laid to rest, investigators pore over the state's autopsy results.
The disturbing thing about the autopsy was that it looked like he may have been shot initially as he was getting into his vehicle, and the rest of the shots he would have taken as he was sitting inside of his car.
The coroner indicates the weapon was either a .38 or .357 revolver, which explains the lack of shell casings found at the scene. Narrowing down owners of either revolver in rural Oklahoma is nearly impossible. For now, investigators will have to wait on the ballistics report.
From what we learned at the scene and through the autopsy, we had no idea whether we were dealing with one person or a dozen.
8 days after the murder, a provocative lead emerges when a woman comes forward claiming to know a pair of burglars who could be involved.
There were 2 individuals who lived in the Cleveland area, and one of them, his ex-girlfriend, came to us.
A woman snitching on her ex could have an ulterior motive, but what she says next gives the tip credibility.
She was able to identify the fact that they owned a red pickup, they had a .357 or 38 caliber weapon. They were thieves who routinely stole from oil and gas companies looking for anhydrous gas. All of those things put together made them very plausible suspects.
Did they give you any idea where they went?
New Jersey.
New Jersey?
Yeah, that's what they said.
So almost immediately, we knew that we were going to New Jersey. I was not worried that this case would not be solved because I knew that we wouldn't give up, that we would figure out who did it.
But the OSBI agents never expected just how far their investigation would have to go to ensure justice is served. It's been just over a week since Cleveland, Oklahoma Sheriff Dwight Woodrow Jr. was gunned down during a routine security check at the Spess-Oil refinery. And Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation agents are in New Jersey chasing what they believe is their best lead. Scott Wilson, one of the two men they're looking for, is already in custody.
Hey, you can uncover.
Never did care for this.
You're in the wrong line of work then.
What brings out of Jersey?
He couldn't believe that we had flown to New Jersey to talk to them about some oil field equipment theft.
Mr. Wilson, when's the last time you were in Oklahoma?
About a week or so ago.
And that was Cleveland.
Are you familiar with Spess-Oil?
Yeah.
Well, the sheriff was murdered there right around the time you left town.
We might have lifted some pipe from a truck every now and again, but we had nothing to do with that.
He was very adamant about the fact that I may be a thief, but I'm not a murderer.
Why were you and your friends in such a hurry to leave town?
Found work. Here.
Wilson lays out a timeline of events, if true, proves his innocence. But what are the chances his alibi can be confirmed?
They had gone to lay cable up in the New Jersey area, which they did pretty much every year.
They were already gone by the time the murder occurred. There was no way they could have done it, so we just kind of left it.
Meanwhile, back in Cleveland, the DA's investigator is hit with an onslaught of leads to develop.
Shay, we were just getting a multitude of tips. They were coming in from everyday citizens.
In Cleveland, you don't have very many secrets. It's a small town.
Shay leans into a story from a woman named Lacey, containing information possibly related to the elusive hoodless red pickup truck.
An ex-boyfriend of hers and a friend of his had recently bought a truck that resembled what we were looking for, and that they were both into the manufacture of methamphetamine.
We love it when they break up and find Jesus, because they will call us.
You got an address for your ex?
Lacey tells investigators her ex goes by the name of Robbie Edwards and supplies his address as well.
Ex-girlfriends will rat you out in a heartbeat.
Already burnt once by an ex with an axe to grind, Agent's excitement remains reserved, though Edwards' latest scrape with the law reveals something pertinent to this case.
After the girlfriend had called, we learned that he had used a gun to pay for a recent bail bond, allegedly a 38 caliber.
The make is consistent with autopsy findings, narrowing the sheriff's murder weapon to either a 38 or .357 revolver.
You know, you're dealing with a group here that are dealing in meth and, thefts. But once it's escalated to a murder, then that's pretty hardcore there.
Investigators approach the suspect's home at an opportune time.
I'll call this in. You check inside. Hello? Get your hands up.
The man overdosing on the front porch proves to be Robbie Edwards. He's the suspect police came looking for. It's determined that the second man in the house is his friend Vince Pritchard. Though the two can hardly claim to be law-abiding citizens, Vince presents investigators with a credible, if unsavory, alibi.
That was at the height of the methamphetamine lab. There were several of those dismantled in that area. Their alibi was that they were at another location cooking methamphetamine.
Yet if a match can be made between Edwards' gun and the incoming ballistics report, OSBI will have all they need to press charges.
Hey, I got it.
It's taken 5 weeks for the ballistics report to arrive.
Looks like it was a 357.
And the lab tests do not match Robbie Edwards' gun.
It was not a 38 that was used, and then we're able to clear both of them as suspects ultimately.
When their hottest tip meets cold water, OSBI agents struggle to stay positive.
We were getting so many different leads that just amounted to nothing. It's time consuming. It takes away from the investigation the fact that in the end, the lead had nothing to do with the investigation, but any lead that came in, you can't ignore it.
As weeks turn into months, folks in Cleveland start to worry that whoever shot the sheriff is going to get away with it.
People were shocked to their core. You know, Little Bitty Town, their innocence is completely gone. Somebody took this man that they loved, who they never imagined would be killed in the line of duty, and they ripped him from him.
For the sheriff's wife and children, the loss is all but insurmountable.
Telling my kids is probably the hardest thing I ever did in my whole entire life. And I think about telling them their dad was never coming home. It was awful. And 2 of them were 5 and 3. They didn't understand. They didn't. My 3-year-old asked for months and months, when's Daddy coming home? When's Daddy coming home? I don't know what was sadder, him asking or when he finally stopped asking.
Despite the drag of time, both investigators and the community of Cleveland know allowing the murder case of Sheriff Dwight Woodrow to go cold is simply not an option.
One of the deputies told me people always talk, and this guy's going to brag about it someday, and we'll find out who did it.
In fact, the next big lead comes to police not only in the form of braggadocio, but in song.
People were saying that an individual had been heard to sing the song, I Shot the Sheriff.
3 months into Oklahoma State's investigation of Sheriff Dwight Woodrow's homicide, OSBI agents have little to show the traumatized town of Cleveland for their efforts.
There was a deep, deep sadness throughout the whole community, not just Cleveland. That anything within 100 miles, people made sure their doors were locked and cars locked up and stuff, and they went home at night.
There was a real fear in my heart that the people who had taken my brother would never have to stand trial for it, and it makes you mad all over again.
Whether the sheriff was gunned down by a random criminal or the target of a devious plot is still unclear. For months, all detectives have been able to do is chase down the various rumors circulating through town, a task that seems to have gotten them nowhere.
You keep thinking the next one you go to is going to be, it's going to turn the tables.
Yeah, we'll be right there.
Let's go.
Now, an intriguing new tip based on the antics of a local petty criminal named Justin Walker warrants a follow-up.
we would get information that Walker would be at parties, high on methamphetamine, and it would break out singing the song "I Shot the Sheriff."
As Walker has just been booked at the county jail for drug charges, the anecdote won't take long to investigate.
Mind taking these cuffs off?
Well, that would depend on what you have to tell us.
Guess we're staying on then.
Walker got arrested on some thefts or drug charges or something with him. We tried to interview him, and he didn't want to talk to us.
I understand you've been singing about shooting the sheriff. Wouldn't have to be a Cleveland sheriff, would it?
Crazy, I ain't shoot no sheriff. It's just a song.
Yeah, he's kind of trying to turn himself into a hero in front of the drug crowd, and killing an officer kind of gives you a little higher stature.
I told you already, I ain't talking to you guys.
Walker's attitude is problematic, to say the least. But is it suspicious or merely belligerent? With so many tips still coming in, agents continue to pursue every lead.
You're always waiting for that big break that's going to come, that's going to send you in the right direction.
An interesting new development warrants a drive back to Tulsa.
We were contacted by a Tulsa bail bondman who had posted bail earlier.
Guy made bail the other night, named Ridgway.
That the people bonding Ridgway out were on their way to pay the fees and stuff. And Ridgway knew that one of those persons was James Taylor.
You know this tape?
No, but it was strange. Ridgway wasn't acting like he wanted to be bailed out. At least not by him.
John Ridgway was afraid that James Taylor and some of the other individuals may be trying to silence him.
He says he was there the night that Cleveland sheriff was killed.
Ridgway was waiting to get bonded. He told the bondman that he had been there and knew what had happened.
The bondsman's statement has the ring of a breakthrough, and what he says next makes that ring sound true.
Ridgway mentions to the bondsman, first of all, a vehicle, a red Ford truck without a hood, and the fact that there were multiple people involved, and that the sheriff was shot with a revolver. That was something that was never put out to the press.
Did he say who else was with him?
The bail bondsman asked him if he shot the Pawnee County sheriff. And he told the bondsman no, that he didn't shoot the sheriff, but he knows who did. And then he proceeded to tell him James Taylor and Justin Walker.
The same Justin Walker who'd allegedly taken to singing "I Shot the Sheriff."
Where's Ridgway now?
The bondsman had to return him to jail for non-payment.
We need you to tell us what you told the bondsman.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The bondsman, you told him you were there when the Cleveland sheriff was shot?
I heard about it. Never said I was there.
It is not unusual at all for someone to hold something back and never actually admit to certain parts of what might have occurred or what they might know. If you see someone kill someone else, you know that they're willing to kill someone. So there's a very real fear for these people that they may kill me too.
I was pretty messed up that night.
He had been doing some kind of drugs. And of course, the long-term use of the drugs was making him sleepy.
Tell us about the truck.
It was red. Didn't have a hood.
And whose was it, do you know?
Shane's.
Shane who?
I can't remember. He lives in Oneida County. I don't feel so good.
Ridgway is either too intoxicated or too scared to tell the police more of what he knows. So the agents arranged to have him return to a solitary cell.
He wasn't getting any information from other prisoners or anything, not getting any newspapers or anything like that.
With this new information, agents hope the elusive truck Woodrow's deputies saw speeding from the murder scene may finally be coming back into view.
Well, it kind of leads you to believe that the truck belonged to this Shane.
But Nowata County vehicle registration records reveal a devastating new twist for investigators.
Shortly after this incident took place, Shane was killed in a motorcycle accident.
Now detectives wonder, is the timing of Shane's death pure coincidence? Or maybe witnessing the sheriff's murder has come with its own punishment. For a tantalizing few hours, OSBI agents believed they were within striking distance of learning who killed Sheriff Woodrow. Instead, investigators see their progress evaporate when one of their suspects, Shane Pinkston, loses his own life.
I know that most of the time, these people try to make out like I'm a big hero and I did this and I'm so proud of it. That night, I don't think that that was what the case was. I think that they were surprised, they got scared, and knew that it was about to go down.
Ridgway didn't know Shane's last name, but we were able to determine that by some other process. We went to that address, which is over in the Nowata County area. That's where we met Shane's father. The truck was there. We were able to view it.
It was a red truck. It had no hood. The truck wasn't running, and the tires had been changed on the vehicle.
Whether the truck contains any physical evidence related to the sheriff's murder remains to be seen. But it definitely matches the description given by sleepy inmate John Ridgway, leading enormous credibility to his claim of being at the scene of the crime. Investigators are coming to believe Sheriff Dwight Woodrow had no prior connection to his killer. Now, they just have to prove it.
We had a warrant to take the truck and have it processed, which we did. We felt that was the truck.
Believing that Ridgway may indeed have watched the murder unfold, Agent Smith and Franchini see what more they can learn from him.
Let's go through it one more time, John. I just don't want to miss anything. I ended up interviewing John Ridgway several times. Every time he'd reveal a little bit more of what happened the night of the murder.
We would just go back over the case, have him tell it again, and he might come up with one or two things each time we talk to him that make sense to us.
All right, John. What do you have to say?
Eventually, a consistent story emerges, starting with the man Ridgway seemed afraid to rat out all along, James Taylor.
Ridgway told me that he was at home, actually home asleep, and that James Taylor called him, told him they were in the Cleveland area and wanted him to bring him a set of bolt cutters.
According to Ridgway, he, Shane, and James Craig Taylor are in the truck, followed by Justin Lee Walker.
Passed out on the way, so they left me on the truck.
Ridgway indicated that he was basically, he was stoned, was in the middle, kind of slouched down the middle of the truck seat.
He falls asleep, but the light comes into the window. He looks up and he sees it's the sheriff's car that pulls in there.
Look out. I see the sheriff talking to Taylor.
James Taylor gave him a story about being an employee there and that his name was Robert Weller. Dwight calls this in as Justin Walker is seeing what's going on.
And out of nowhere, there's Walker holding up a gun. And then, bam.
There's one gunshot. Saw the sheriff fall in the seat, and then there's 5 more gunshots.
Quit watching after that.
With Ridgway's documented confession, investigators now pursue James Taylor and shooter Justin Walker.
Case rocked on until we got what we were sure were all the facts we could get. They were finally murder charges were issued for James Taylor and Justin Walker.
The two prove easy to find. By the time their arrest warrants are issued, both are back in jail on unrelated charges.
I think knowing that there was an arrest was, to some extent, a sense of closure, that was a first step in them coming to justice for sure.
We were just so damn happy to have, a suspect that we knew was going to be charged.
On March 6, 2006, James Taylor is tried and sentenced to life in prison for the second-degree murder of Sheriff Dwight Woodrow Jr. A month later, Justin Walker, the man who sang "I Shot the Sheriff," pleads no contest and is sentenced to 30 years. In exchange for his testimony, John Ridgway is acquitted of any charges related to the crime.
I remember seeing them for the first time in court, and I never really had a lot of emotion towards them. Every time they finally arrested somebody, I was just already to the point in my faith and in my life that they'd stolen so much from my family. I didn't hate them. I wasn't angry. I refused to give them anything else.
I looked in just long enough to satisfy me, and then I looked at my guys, and I could see sorrow. I could see rage. I mean, just this whole rainbow and spectrum of emotions.
They didn't get what they deserved, but I felt satisfied in that they did get sentenced.
The small town of Cleveland will always remember Sheriff Dwight Woodrow Jr.
It's a stretch of highway between Cleveland and Pawnee, which is where the sheriff's office is in the county courthouse. And Dwight traveled that road every day to and from work. They've renamed that Woodrow Highway.
I think by the community he'll be remembered as a good old boy, and not in a bad way. As a good old boy who tried to do right and cared and paid the ultimate sacrifice for no good reason.